China's yuan replaces the dollar as the most traded currency in Russia as the Kremlin urges conversion from what they call toxic to friendly currencies. How concerned should we be? About the Chinese yuan, here's what China expert Gordon Chang had to say.
The problem for the Chinese currency, it's not convertible on the capital account, often not convertible on the current account. China, for a lot of reasons, does not want to give up control of its currency. And if you want to be the world's reserve currency, you've got to do things that Beijing is now not prepared to do.
And the voter-approved Los Angeles mansion tax has now gone into effect on April the 1st. It imposes an additional 4% tax on LA property sales, commercial and residential, of over $5 million and 5.5% on those above $10 million, with the tax paid by the seller. It is expected to raise $1 billion annually. Backers say this will reduce homelessness, make housing more affordable, and protect low-income seniors. My guest is the editor-in-chief of Forbes, Steve Forbes. Steve, thank you for coming on. First, the Chinese yuan. I am not a currency expert. My feeling is if people have lost confidence in the dollar, what makes think the Chinese currency is going to be more stable?
The answer is no, because they don't have the capital. They don't have the capital markets that we have here in this country. They don't have the depth of the exchange trading that you need. And so if people are going to turn to something other than the dollar, they'll turn to the euro or the Swiss franc. The Swiss franc, by the way, has kept its purchasing power better than any other currency for the past 100 years. So they want a track record. And the fact that Beijing can act arbitrarily in terms of what it does internally, what happened to Jack Ma of Alibaba, is a salutary lesson to others that they can make a promise one day, but upend the table and turn it over the next day. So it's confident. And so when you read about France wanting to do a deal in yuan, the Saudis wanting to do a deal, Brazil wanting to do a deal, those are really one-offs, you might say, that are politics. The new president of Brazil doesn't like the U.S. The president of France has delusions that he can be a world diplomatic maker and shaker. So he wants to kick us in the teeth when he can. And the Saudis are angry at our foreign policy, favoring the Iranians over the Saudis. That's why they turn to the Chinese. And so for good measure, they'll use the yuan just as a real warning to the U.S. Don't take us for granted. Get your act together.
So, Steve, are all these countries going to rue the day?
I don't think they're going to rue the day. Saudis have immense amounts of oil, so they can quickly change course if they feel the U.S. is getting its act together on foreign policy. And I think that'll happen certainly after 2024, if not before. France will always be France, and they never seem to regret that their growth rates in the last few decades have been negligible when they should be a world a premier economy. And in terms of Brazil, sadly, they have a saying, Brazil has a great future and always will. And certainly with the socialist president who was in before and then was arrested later on corruption charges, I don't think he's going to be a great success. So eventually he'll be replaced. And hopefully Brazil will get a president who will be able to have the political muscle to get positive things through and get that country moving the way it should, which is needed because Latin America has been drifting leftward because of the failures of their own failures and also the failures of the United States.
Speaking of which, should we be worried about our currency given the printing of money, the inflation, and the fact that we have this $22 trillion debt?
The answer is you should be worried about the dollar. The dollar remains king of the world only because the other currencies are worse, not because of the sterling attributes of the dollar. So in terms of if we put in, say, Reaganist policies on cutting taxes, getting rid of regulations instead of piling on new ones, now the latest one is war on air conditioners. You know why they're going after air conditioners. It's not about energy. It's about punishing Florida and Texas because all these people are moving there. So if we got our act together, a stable dollar, you would see people yearning to have the dollar. Most of our currency, amazingly, especially the $100 bill, most of it circulates outside the United States because people use it not just for nefarious activities, but because they don't trust their own local currencies. And in a place like Argentina, they'll denominate informally contracts in the dollar rather than their local currency.
Inflation has consequences. As the Fed raises interest rates to combat out-of-control government spending, long-term bonds have diminished in value, crippling banks. Depositors are holding their breath, and investors are bailing on bank stocks. Diversification has never been more important. And the recent surge in gold prices is directly tied to the extreme market volatility right now. This is why gold has historically been a great hedge against the stock market and against inflation. Now would be a fantastic time to diversify into gold with Birch Gold Group. Birch Gold makes it easy to convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in precious metals. Here's what you need to do. Just visit LarryForGold.com to get a free info kit on gold. They'll help you convert your existing IRA or 401k that's tied to a volatile market into an IRA in physical precious metals, gold and silver. And the best part, it's tax sheltered. So visit LarryForGold.com to claim your free info kit on gold today with an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, thousands of happy customers, and countless 5-star reviews. Birch Gold is who you can trust to protect your future. Visit LarryForGold.com today. That's LarryForGold.com. Steve, are you in the school? I think there's a growing number of people who believe that the war in Ukraine has caused the dollar to weaken. Do you feel that way?
No, because Ukraine is much related to what China will do with Taiwan. And I think if we show resilience there in Ukraine and show we're not afraid of Vladimir Putin, this war would have been over months ago if we'd given Ukraine the proper weaponry at the beginning instead of always being a military equivalent of a day late and a dollar short. So, yes, it is a very much connected world. What the real scandal is not helping Ukraine. For instance, Poland and the Baltic states of Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and other countries on the front lines, the reason they're putting in more proportionally to GNP than we are is because they know if Ukraine goes, Poland knows it's going to be next. It will be attacked next. And they have a long history with Russia, and they don't want to see that movie again. So in terms of our military side, the scandal there is we're not doing what we should be doing to our military. Our procurement system vastly needs reform. There's no reason why it should take 100 years to put in a new weapons system, for crying out loud. Mm-hmm. So there are positive things that can be done. And on the spending side, which is why the national debt keeps going up, most of it is going for hundreds of billions of dollars for these green crony projects that you know are not going to work. Germany tried it. Their electricity costs are 2 to 3 times our own. And that's why their chemical companies, which are big users of energy, are coming to the United States.
Let's talk about the LA mansion tax, Steve. How about just taking a chainsaw to the economy of California and be done with it?
Well, they're doing their best, which makes one amused that the governor wants to run for president when everything he's done to California is a textbook example of what not to do, whether it was coping with COVID, whether it's regulations, whether it's flushing half of California's annual rainfall into the ocean instead of storing it, bad land management, green policies that are wrecking the electricity grid, threatening blackouts if you get a real heat wave. So on that wonderful record, he wants to run for president. I hope he does, because maybe we can bury these crazy ideas once and for all. And in terms of a mansion tax, and you're seeing it in Chicago in a different way, they have just elected a new mayor who says the rich and the corporations are why crime is going up. So we've got to tax them more. And so they're going to wreck what's left of Chicago. And mansion tax, people want to stay in California. They like the climate. It's a great area, except for the politics. This will just be another example of why people are just going to cross the borders, to Nevada, Arizona, Texas, and other parts of the country. As you know, for the first time in California's existence as a state, there's been net out migration rather than in migration.
Steve, proponents of the mansion tax say it's going to raise money to fight homelessness, it's going to increase development, and it's going to protect seniors.
It's going to do the exact opposite. So often on these policies, if you take the opposite of what they say is what you're going to get. In terms of the problem of homelessness, the problems of housing costs in California, most of it is due to regulation. You try to get a housing project done in California, it can take months, if you're lucky, years most likely, and then you have to put on a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with the project, but if you want political approval, you got to go along with it. By contrast, in a state like Texas, in a matter of weeks, you can get a development project approved. Other states like Georgia, a very quick approval process instead of dragging these things out. So you look at the states that have population growth but don't have the acute housing problems that California has, you find it's regulations. So you deal with regulations. You knew that from your run for governor, how crazy self-inflicted that wound is. And as for the elderly, again, if you allow all kinds of different kind of housing, entrepreneurs will figure out a way to do it.
Right.
You saw the rise of the suburbs was entrepreneurs all around the country building affordable housing after World War II and going on ever since. And so in terms of homelessness, you deal with it with compassion, but you don't let these encampments go and fester. And many of those people, unfortunately, have a network. Where is the best way to put up a camp? And unfortunately, Los Angeles is one of them. And so you end up hurting the very people you allegedly want to help.
Finally, Steve, my friend, and I know your friend, the brilliant economist Thomas Sowell, regarding things like the mansion tax, he said, just put it to the three-pronged test. Who's going to pay? How much is it going to cost? And will it achieve the desired effect? And generally speaking, it'll fall on one, if not all three of these points.
That's exactly true. And in terms of, you also have all this push in California and elsewhere for more and more price controls, rent controls. And I think it was Larry Summers, of all people, put it rather indelicately. He once said there are two ways to destroy a city. One, of course, is bombing it, and the other is to put in rent control and the policies related to it. And you'll wreck them, just as you see in Portland, just as you saw in Detroit years ago, and what you're seeing unfolding, tragically, totally unnecessary, given all its attributes, Chicago.
Steve Forbes, Editor-in-Chief, Forbes Magazine. As always, Steve, thank you very much for taking the time. God bless.
Bless you. Thank you, Larry.
Now, I know you like the show, so please hit that like button. Also, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get our subscriptions up. And then scroll down a little bit and get on our mailing list. That way you can make sure you don't miss any of our videos. Also, hit that donate button. Throw a little something in the tip jar. Make sure we continue giving you hard-hitting, candid, honest programming. Finally, Larry with Epoch, E-P-O-C-H, Larry with Epoch.com. I'm Larry Elder. This has been the Larry Elder Show for Epoch Times. Remember, we've got a country to save. I'll see you next time. God bless.